Hey guys, Scott, Modeler X, how's it going? It probably feels like snail's pace. I've been out of the country for 3 weeks in May, so we're just getting back to the Star Destroyer here. This is part 5, and been working on some of the exterior detail pieces. Specifically, we're looking at the two green strawberry parts, which is the engine bells and the hangar bay detail. And so we've got, if you get this piece, the engine bells, there's a lot of solid resin, and you got to do quite a bit of cutting away and getting the pieces to where they're actually what you want, without a square of resin sticking out on one end or the other. So here's one of the main engine bells, and we've gone ahead and sanded everything and then put in that inner ring. And if you can see that, it's just super glued in. Oops, wrong way. And have sanded that off on the exterior. These little guys are probably the most difficult, just because they are so delicate themselves and they are immersed in a square of resin. So you got to be real careful when you get down to breaking it free, that you don't break it. And I did actually break one of them, so I had to go through the, I don't even know which one it is, but a mending process. I think it's this one. Yeah, we glued it like right, you see the little shiny right there. Had to glue the ring back together with some super glue so that it was a ring again and not the letter C. So these little guys fit right on the edges of that, and this is going to be kind of tricky to glue together, just because the contact points are going to be all these little ribs on the inside, barely touch this, and then there's a gap created, which gives that really cool detail engine effect with the ring with those little control flaps on the outside. And so we'll get to that at some point. These little guys, there's 4 of them. There's an internal piece there. Those have all been glued in. They don't reach into the back, but just need to be glued like kind of in the center there. And there's some, looks like little triangle stumps that all point towards the middle. I tried to center that as much as I could so that we get the detail that we want off those pieces. So as far as engines, that's where we got the Photoetch. I'm going to do another video on that, because that was a challenge, and still working on it. The next piece here is the landing bay, which, let's start with the little one. This is the one that's more on the front end of the ship. It's the little one, and kind of cool. You know, it's boxes of folded together Photoetch, which with some detail inside, and then some little I don't know what you call them, shadow boxes or something, that you fold together and put in here, and then they got little like gaps which will let the light in. So when we get to a point of like right there on the underside of the ship, that will be lit by these openings, which will face towards the top of the mounting point. When they're sitting in the hull, the light will be shining down on them, which is it looks good. I painted these just flat white on the inside, and there's definitely some raised details, so we'll go to a little bit of a weathering trouble to get that to stand out. Currently working on the main hangar bay, which I will say this for the wild green strawberry, wild strawberry, I think it's green strawberry, sorry. Some of the pieces that are in the Photoetch are a real challenge to fold up and get to the shape that you want. Specifically, this little control bay, I think it's a control center for the bay. It's a rounded piece with a slanted front end and a rounded top, and you got to kind of fold this thing down and then wrap it around the top piece here. And that was a real challenge to get that to work, let alone there's 9 windows in it for lighting, and then subsequently lighting that and getting rid of light leaks, because this Photoetch leaves a nice big open gap if you're not perfect with your folding. And so I've been addressing this with the the good old tulip here, and then letting it dry and cutting it away, and it cuts away really nice, so you can sort of run the X-Acto blade on it and then peel areas where you've overspilled, and just kind of work your way to where you just got a single little black area. And then we'll hit this again with some white, and I'll show you a still here of the two. Actually, before we get to that, there's two 0402 SMDs cool white that I put in. I had to drill a couple of holes in the back of this plate, and they're just sitting right underneath that little deck. And here's a still of it lit up. So you can see, there's kind of the black goop in the lighted windows, and I used a little hot glue on the inside to kind of use it as like a lens to get the light where I wanted it to go, and kind of stick everything together on the inside, because those, as you know, Photoetch is kind of springy, and keeping those two little flaps wrapped around like we wanted them and holding their place was a real challenge. That's why I say, I like the Photoetch for the detail, but some of these pieces are a real challenge to put together, and you just got to kind of keep fiddling with it. So, and then there's a couple of little hanger bays. There we go. Got a little light in there. You can see those sort of hanging on the back there. It's the same deal on the other side. It's a couple of little landing bays, and they got some openings at the top that will let light in, and that's going to look pretty cool. I'm anxious to mount both these into the hangar bay. The other piece, this is sort of the interior ceiling of the main hangar bay, and it's comprised of three pieces that are all sandwiched together. One is sort of the base, and then one is sort of a grid, and then the other is sort of a technical. It looks like they got a little conveyor that runs probably a little crane around to grab ships that they've captured. And as you can see that, if I sort of angle it, you can see the light kind of reflecting on those. And I think that offers us some good opportunity to add some color and add some weathering to sort of make those distinct. Additionally, as this sits in the hull here, I think the lighting that's going to be coming in from the sides, there's this row of light, this row of openings on each edge right here on that side, and then also on that side. Those are going to be letting light in from the side, and we'll be hitting that this sandwich grid ceiling almost directly from the side, and will probably make a really cool effect. But let's get to that when we get to that. Hang on a sec here, and we'll get to the main ship hull. Alright, so here she is. I believe all the assembly's done, and all of the penetrations for windows have been filled with 0.02 fiber optics. Just a segment that's centimeter or so, maybe a couple centimeters depending on where it's located, inside of the hull, pointing in towards the light, and then the outside exposed. Let me do a kind of a close-up here for you. Let's just run a close-up so you can see the little fiber optics, little pieces sticking out of all the windows here. And this is along that edge, and then the same deal's happening down here. Well, it's harder to see because there's a gap. Let me kind of move that to the side there. Now you can see the same sort of deal. Those LEDs exposed, or I'm sorry, the fiber optics exposed there, and then also in these sort of holes coming out of those little raised areas across the front of the ship, and it's obviously happening on the whole bridge area. So now that we've painted, this is a section which hasn't been assembled yet. I'm sorry, this is a section, it's still disassembled from the whole model, and I want to have this remain open so that we can get this put together and have a hole to deal with here. This is the bottom hull, which I'm not painted yet. You can see it's a darker gray, and still prepping some of these areas. I want to get, there's an overlay right here which is actually in place for the Photoetch on that bay, and in addition to that I've got to grind down the exterior perimeter of this bay and get that flush so that we can add some more Photoetch here. And once I get that and get it all glued into place, then we'll go ahead and spray this with the same sort of, I chose a real light gray, as you can see. I'm not sure how well that comes through, but in looking at specifically Rogue One, I found a great, well, first of all, there's a ton of footage of Star Destroyers, and they had a real light, sort of a bright gray to them, and I'm kind of going for that kind of a look. And so you know, that's easy enough for just, you know, painting them gray and whatnot. The wires are pretty much all ready to go, so then we're into what do we do about stand and getting a stem going from the bottom here, from a display base, and display base will be a whole nother video, but right now this is all ready to go, and I've basically made this hole specific to this aluminum rod. And then on the inside here, I'll show a couple stills of this, but we basically have, I found this wooden piece which was center drilled perfectly for this specific aluminum size, which I believe is 1/4 of an inch. I'll figure that out and tell you later. And then the nice thing is that here's the 1-up size for the for this aluminum rod, and this actually is 9/32. So maybe I have this actually marked. Wouldn't that be amazing if I marked it? Looks like I didn't. Oh well. But the nice thing is that this slides in perfectly, just like a sleeve, into this one, and will allow, once we get that all assembled, it will turn. I'm holding it steady on the bottom here and turning it. So I'm looking forward to finishing that, and obviously we got to cut these to size, and these are way too big for what I want at this point. But the nice thing is, it was finding this sort of spool looking deal, and I found that at Hobby Lobby in their wood section, and just measured it, and then found different pieces of tubing, and found one that I believe I had to, or I did have to, largen this slightly so that it really got in there, and right now I think I can just pressure fit this and it will hold its own. So I'm not probably going to glue it, but I did take this little spool, and because the hull of the ship slants down and you want it to be level, I did take this spool and shave the bottom of it. You know, it'd be like taking, if this was the spool, shave off from one end, sort of, you know, push it so that this was shaved off. And I basically put a little, you know, bubble level on the top of this and position this thing with some stands on it and set it right on top of there and put the level on top of it, and then just kept filing that down until it was actually level. And then, as you can see, there's this little box here. I found these on the internet. They're just little plastic hobby boxes that you can put whatever little kit you want in it. And they're certainly not very big, as you can see. But I just took the bottom of it and epoxied that to the hull right there, and then put the spool in. Well, obviously we had to drill the hole when we got into here, you know, where we decided that we wanted to mount And once we cut through that hole there, position this right over it, and then drill through that box, which was epoxied, to the bottom. And this wasn't filled with epoxy yet. And then once we got in there, we could put the spool. And then once the spool, I slightly glued that down and then filled this whole thing with epoxy to give it a lot of strength, so you can, you know, basically hold the whole model. And right now it's a little front heavy, but when we get the other hull on here, and then we get, you know, the superstructure on top of it, you know, it should even that thing out a lot. And then when it sits on the stand, it'll be, you know, level. So that's sort of a status, part 5 of where we are. And I realize I didn't do much instructional, but if you have any questions, please do so in the video message area below, and like the video if you like it. If you don't. And I guess that's it. So take care. Happy modeling.